Salutations upon all points of the shining triangle. So, reality, as we experience it, is an experiment. Some people call it a rebellion, but that's silly, because that implies there is something for spirit to rebel against. And there is only spirit. But what it is, reality, is spirit having the grand idea of creating a reality separate from itself. As in, separate from being one with every aspect of itself always. Because there can be no differentiation, there can be no true life experience in the pleroma, or spirit, the Godhead, nirvana, all that, the Brahman even. These are aspects of reality that we put words to allude to something we can't describe, which is us, like the precursor of individuation. Basically, we call God. Geometrically, this is represented by the flower of life, beginning as a point that limits itself wholly, completely, and creates a void in which it exists as a point. This point creates a shape, a tetrahedron or a square, any shape. The shape is a representation of what the being will be. So the tetrahedron spins after you get the 4 points. The fifth stage is a stage of motion. The tetrahedron spins, creates a sphere, circle. From then on, you get the idea of the flower of life, where a circle is merged in with a circle. This is either done by spirit splitting itself off. The essence is the same as mitosis. You have a single being divided up into many smaller things. Single-celled creatures evolved into multiple-cell creatures, which evolved into organisms that no longer resemble the original single-cell, but without it could not exist. Right? Like we take evolution as a fact, as opposed to everything being dropped in all at once. There is a progression we see from the smallest to the largest, and then from the largest to the smallest, as in galactic explosions leading to stars, leading to planets, leading to life on Earth or wherever. Circle, Puscifer Pisces. The Puscifer Pisces is the emanation of light. It shows the idea of like the eye. I mean, of course, there's geometries that are the eye, much bigger, but the shape of it. Also, what you get is the peak and the valley in a sine wave. So the two circles coming together create what they essentially are on their own. A circle is an up and a down. The two circles intermixing, it creates an interference pattern. You take two things resonating. If they're the same, you put them up to each other. Two speakers, it doesn't just double it. You begin to square the sound. So you get three up against each other. I think it's like nine speakers, essentially. I maybe even 12. I forget how it even works. But that's essentially what's happening with the pattern. The small amount of the resonation frequency of one circle is multiplied by an infinite amount. As each circle is laid down, light is projected outward. But again, these are concepts that we use to describe something that isn't light, because sunlight is not the light of spirit necessarily. That is the light of the physical world. Anyway, the rebellion, the Luciferian rebellion, I guess, or experiment. The 33 1/3 of us that chose to descend from spirit, separate from spirit. It's not just moving. In the spiritual world, things aren't separated by distance. They're separated by likeness. But even that is talking about the spiritual world created to create this world. So, one interference pattern. Okay, straight lines, circles and straight lines. The circles represent the minds. The one mind divided into many minds, seeking to live life. Because as I was saying, you can't live life in a perfect spiritual existence as God. God does not live well, that's silly to say, because he does through all of us. That is what this is all about. Anyway, so the straight lines represent the crystalline of matter within a spiritual frequency. Each living thing has a crystalline structure, not only around it, but around the entire planet. These shapes create the new sphere, the collective consciousness, unconscious, all the collective consciousness of all species are bound together in the life web. The flower of life and the connections made within it is a tool to gain understanding of these connections. Because one of the things that's required in order to live in this reality is that you suffer ignorance and forgetfulness. Because you are born an individual, and each individual has a beginning point. You are not undifferentiated spirit amongst the stars. You are a living being on a planet who has a mother and a father. What humans or anything alive needs are reminders of the mission, which is to endure and not just blindly suffer, but to live a life worthy of creation, because there is no reason for creation if you're suffering. That defeats the purpose. Suffering is only a teaching tool. Your karma, your suffering, all of this is to teach you that you shouldn't be a jerk to people. You shouldn't make other people suffer, because you know what it feels like. Most people don't take it that way. Most people take, since I am suffering, you will suffer also, and often more than me. Right? But another thing I feel the pattern shows is how silly that is. Because, man did not weave the web of life, he has merely a strand in it. Right? So, what you do to any one person, you're doing to yourself. You're affecting the reality that we are co-creating together. So making anybody hate this place more brings it down, brings more hate into it. Your job is to uplift humanity. Our job is to uplift humanity. This is why Trav was in checkout mode, because I felt like I was not uplifting anybody. In fact, I was only showing the darkness. But then, if I give up and just accept death, is that not also a more negative thing than me maybe not agreeing with every human being I meet, you know? Like a broken heart may drive some to be angry and hateful, but it's been the enlightening force in my life. Because if I was with a woman, I would be happy and enjoy life in a completely different way. I would have a reason to love it. I would have a tangible reason to wake up every day and do stuff, because I would have somebody to make happy. This is why the idea, like the twin soul, or a man is only as good as the woman behind him. Even in the New Eon, the idea of the Hierophant, with the woman standing before him with the sword. He doesn't even bear the sword, his intellect. She does. And all these concepts are concepts that I accept and see in action, but they're not ones that I have in my life. No loving embrace to see me through. Alright? So, what does it do it for? I don't know. Oh yeah, wait. Loves it. He loves it. That's what it is. This is the tool army pattern. The simplest pattern you can put on the flower of life is the cube. By connecting every center to itself, create cubes. The cubes are squares looked at a different view. The square and the circle represent human consciousness. This is not the human life wave. this is a superior life wave. I don't necessarily understand it fully, but it's the one pattern that I draw more than anything else. Well, except for that one. So the circles, the minds that resonate together are aligned in a certain hierarchy. This doesn't mean one's better than the other. It is simply difference. A demonic entity is an entity that is in the wrong place. If it were in its proper place and time, it would act without disturbing the whole, right? Disease, dis-ease, is something functioning improperly, something out of balance, something in the wrong place. Now, I had an interesting experience on the 4th where you basically all life agrees on living together. We agreed to feed off each other in a certain type of way, off ourselves. In 2005 and 2006, I had repeating dreams of the Ouroboros, the snake devouring itself, where I was the snake devouring myself. And the more I would eat, the more I would have to go to the bathroom. But I was very much aware that I was inside of my mouth. So, I didn't want to piss in my mouth. I certainly didn't want to shit in my mouth. So I'd have to learn to control how much I would eat in each dream, because then I couldn't maintain it because I would wake up then. But it was what I started to realize was it was pleasurable to eat myself, because what I was doing was the same thing on the Anima album, the CD, Bill Hicks's The Evolution of Man. It's that one fucking rib. So that was what started happening then. I was the dragon still, but every once in a while I would realize I'm a person, and I would gain legs, and my tail would be not my tail so much. You dig? And then it wasn't so much about pissing in my mouth that I was worried about. You see? And it was at that point, after waking up a few times, on the edge, that in one of the dreams, I was able to pull my head out and stand up and look around the dream. And then my dreams just continued normally after that. But it was it was strange because it explained a way that people are experiencing life that I think some stay like that forever, where you stay consuming the tail, eating it, pissing, shitting, and coming in your mouth constantly because it feels good. You might not enjoy all the discharging, but leading to that point is pleasure, bliss. But pulling my head out and living a real life in the dream was more pleasurable because of it's like the scale changed. It went from being very small, just me, myself, and I, to this wider world. Now, it doesn't mean that there was any size to the Ouroboros. I mean, it was everything. Everything is always everything. You always have the same amount because it's everything. But the reason we keep descending, or that we descend so far into the pattern, is to create an amount of diversity in the system where see, this is where I keep having weird experiences of reality. Because if this is a co-creation and we agree to do this, separate our consciousness from God, the one, us being one with ourselves. Okay. What keeps coming up into my head is that this is a prison. And that we're containing evil within this place so that there's a place where evil doesn't exist at all. At all. Not duality. Not two sides of a coin. Like in a chemical reaction, there's stages. This is after evil. That's the only way I can describe it. So it's not like evil wasn't and didn't have anything to do with creating this place. It was necessary to create this place, but it cannot exist within it because the chemical reaction occurred and now things are different. There is no good. There is no evil. And the way I'm been being shown what this is the transcendental aspect of reality. Where where you meditate and you go down below. Okay, how do I have this? Macro being, multiverse, universe, galaxy, solar system, planet formation, molecular, cellular, chemical structure, atomic structure, and then Planck scale and Higgs vibration, which lead to the unified field. The unified field is the ocean of consciousness that is the one circle. But you're not being absorbed into the ocean, you're soaking it up like a sponge. And then your circle expands. The concentric circles. You start small. You rise to Tiferet. Within Tiferet, okay, it can also be viewed as you're big and you go down and you gain a new level of understanding. Either way, what you're doing is creating concentric circles that envelop more parts of the pattern. What that represents in life is that you are aware of more information within reality. You shine. Okay, light shines and removes darkness without effort. The same way illumination of the mind shines and removes negativity from your mind, from your mental and emotional bodies. This is what, what's his name, Lynch, he'll talk about dipping a fabric into gold liquid, bringing it up, letting it dry. Some of the gold fades, but some of it stays. You dip it again. You keep dipping it until it stays gold. Dig it? Sacred geometry is just a subconscious representation of our inner world. It's a language. It's also the, what would you call it? Like the how-to guide. If you want to make something in reality, you can, as long as it follows the rules on the pattern. Just like you can't say anything that your larynx can't produce as a word, nothing can exist in reality that doesn't exist as a sacred geometric expression. As I was saying before, every life form has a pattern. The circle and the square represent humanity. This is circle and squares tilted. You see a hexagon or a cube, it's the same thing as circles and squares, spheres and cubes. What is important is the relationship of the square, cube to the circle. So where as I was saying, you can grow this center pattern of yourself out. And what you're doing in real life is also creating a crystalline structure that would technically be formed out of circles. I haven't found a reason for straight lines yet, other than to describe crystalline structure and nature. But the crystalline structure is always molecules that line up a certain way to appear straight. So if my scale was big enough, these lines could all be circles, right? Just like the Earth, you go out so far, you zoom in on it, we build buildings with 90-degree angles because it's so big, it looks flat. This is where flat earthers get fucked. But the straight lines technically are the first thing created, except because of the point line tetrahedron of spirit created before the spin. So part of me believes that what we build as living creatures, the things we create, are straight lines. Anything dead, anything, tools, movies, books, paintings, skeletons, shells. Like, imagine a shell being left behind. That type of the thing needed it for life is no longer there, but the shell contains geometries that tell a story of its life, or about life in general. So the physical body follows certain geometries, and these same geometries we use when building temples on Earth to reflect the image. So, like in the Bible, it said, we were created with the image of the Elohim, or Elohim Yahweh, however you want to read the book. So that can either be interpreted as things that created us look human, or things that created us, dig. They would be a part of the same frequency, reality. And the geometries of the Tree of Life, the Sephiroth, which basically it means to count. Sephira means it's to count. So you have the 10 or 13 either countable or uncountable aspects. Because it's weird, because it's like a not thing. Sephiroth are not things. And they become what we call emanations, but it didn't start out that way. As far as I can tell. Anyway, and then you get the pathways, which are also numbered / letters. Like a program that you can alter different ways, like DNA. The DNA is the same letters, different order. Depending on the order, depending on what is active and inactive in DNA, or the pattern, is what creation you get. So you could imagine drawing this image and then choosing certain lines, picking out certain circles, adding certain circles, thus alluding to a certain creature. Like in this, I don't have the supernals extended. In that one, I started to. Keither is represented as the 9 circles. Sweet baby Jesus, the furniture. Anyway, you get what I'm saying, right? Concentric circles. Oh, they gave up. Concentric circles can allude to the levels of consciousness. So this Keither is a mirror of the entire tree itself. It's a similar way of showing the same thing. 9 concentric circles, or 9 Sephiroth, are alluding to the same level of consciousness, I think, which as I said, is humanity, not angel or God or whatever. Like, humans are the goal of this creation, as far as I can tell, because we can alter reality on a fundamental level. We can manipulate gene structure, atomic structure. We can manipulate the pattern that creates us on a fundamental level, which means we can alter ourselves on a fundamental. Hey, Puddles, that's my picture. On a fundamental level, which is simultaneously awesome and terrifying. This is where the transhumanism people are really taking strides. Because, okay, since we all co-create reality, as I was saying before, many of us need reminding of why we're here. It's because we wanted to come here. We love it here. We want to love it here. We created the conditions to make it paradise. But everyone has to agree that that's what it is. If we don't, it isn't. Right, Palos? Right now, people still don't agree that this is paradise. They either are waiting for salvation or complete destruction of this place. And it's because in their core, they know they're separated from God. And after so much time, they begin to feel weighed down by it. The separation. So it's got me wondering, is the only way for a being like that to escape this reality transcendence? Or is dissolution the way they go? Like, had I killed myself, would I be gone from the co-creation, or would I be thrown back into it in a worse off cycle? Yeah, the karma getting you by the balls, which seems to be what some people believe, that you are irresistibly drawn back to the light of the world, right? But then that would mean they would come back with that feeling again, that funny feeling that they want to see the world end. And if there's enough people feeling like that, all at the same time, would that not bring about such an experience? As in, if collectively people dream of Armageddon enough, is that what we get? And is there any way to separate minds from the pattern, like Matrix style? If you didn't want to be in the Matrix and you wanted to leave, they make a deal so that anybody can leave the Matrix. You don't have to stay a part of the system. Now, I know that is alluding to leaving the Matrix and going to Zion. And in Zion, you can experience the Matrix as an outsider by jacking in or not. But you're never bound to the Matrix. And then, see, I'm really interested to see the new one, because even in the Zion, when Trinity sees the sun, that's alluding to another level than Zion and the Machine City. So, Machine City, Zion, Matrix, the sun, right? You forget in the planets, you remember in the stars. Anyway, it's just something that's been coming up because I keep having this weird experience that this is prison, and that collectively we are containing something in it so that it can't, like I said, corrupt these other areas. But it's not even that it could corrupt them, because it can't enter them. So again, I'm back at this chemical reaction process where the way, it's so hard to put into words. I'm going to give up. I'm just going to give up on the words. Hey, Pedro, how about not do that? Let's just love the geometry. How about that, Pedro? So Malkuth is grown over by Yesod. The foundation of all Malkuth begins up here. And this is because Yesod filters the divine, what would you call it? Influx. Each Sephiroth contains and disseminates parts of the intelligence onto the creatures within Malkuth. The mother of formation,